Every Genshin Impact player should know these things when they start playing the game, but unfortunately the game leaves you to figure out much of them yourself. A lot of these things are briefly explained by the in-game tutorials, but some might leave you wanting more than just a brief explanation. As such, I've put together a list of 9 things that every player should know but the game itself doesn't tell you. Number 1. What should you wish for? The game introduces the wishing system to you, but then just leaves it up to you to figure out which things are worth wishing for. Considering this is the thing that will tempt people into spending their hard-earned money on the game, I feel I should start this video by giving the best advice I can on wishing. When you first unlock wishing, you'll see multiple different screens with things for you to wish for. To help with some terminology, most people refer to these different wishing options as banners and refer to spending their currency on one of these wishes to be a pull. So if I use those words later, that's what I mean. At the front will be the beginner's wish, at the back will be the permanent standard wish, also called Wanderlust Invocation, and in between will be all of the current limited time event wishes, which change every 3 weeks. The first thing to note is that there are 2 types of wish currency: Acquaint Fates, the blue ones, which can only be spent on the beginner and standard wishes, and Intertwined Fates, the purplish multicolored ones, which can only be spent on the limited event wishes. Everything on the standard wish can also be gotten from an event wish, so Intertwined Fates are always more valuable. There's not much to say about the standard wish other than to just pull on it whenever you feel like it and have Acquaint Fates to spend, because once the beginner's wish is gone, that's all there is to do with your Acquaint Fates. To answer another question you might have, there is no difference between doing a single pull or a 10 pull on any wish, other than you don't have to sit through the wishing animation 10 times if you do a 10 pull. That's it. Next, let's talk about the beginner's wish. If you come from certain other gacha games, you might wonder if the beginner's wish is worth pulling on. Well, I can definitively tell you that in Genshin Impact, the beginner's wish is 100% worth it. Not only is the beginner's wish discounted, but the things you can get from it are limited to the things that were in the game in 1.0, and any 4-star you get will be a character, not a weapon. What you might not realize is that multiple of the 4-star characters from 1.0 are still top tier to this day. Outside of those characters appearing on a limited wish, the beginner's wish will be the highest chance of earning copies of them. The opportunity cost is 16 pulls on the standard wish, which, let's be honest, who cares? That would put you 16 wishes closer to a standard 5-star, which are all worse than the 4 stars I mentioned. So now let's talk about the bread and butter of Genshin Impact's monetization, the limited event wishes. First things first, wishing or pulling on these banners is pretty much just gambling.
Do not get it twisted.
Keep that in mind before you decide to start spending money to try to get a character. That said, you can find an explanation of the wishing mechanics on the wish details, but I'll give you the important points. The 2 things you need to know about are the pity system and the 50-50. The pity system guarantees you will get a certain rarity of item within a maximum number of pulls, which we call hard pity. You are guaranteed a 4-star item within 10 pulls of the last one, and a 5-star character within 90 pulls of the last one, and a 5-star weapon within 80 pulls of the last one. The odds also increase when you get close to hard pity, making it more likely to get the high rarity item, and we call that soft pity. Then comes the 50-50. When you do get a 4-star or 5-star, there's only a 50% chance that it will be a rate up one. Otherwise, it will be something of the same rarity from the standard banner. If it's not a rate up one, then we say you lost the 50-50, but you are now on a guarantee because your next item of that rarity is guaranteed to be a rate up item. And when you do get a rate up item, the pity counter for that rarity resets back to the start. The weapon banner is pretty much the same, except that there are 2 rate up 5-star weapons on the same banner, so the odds are different. You have a 75% chance of getting one of these 2 weapons on the quote-unquote 50-50. In order to get the one that you want, the weapon banner also has epitomized path, where you can specify that weapon. Then, if you get any 5-star but that one, you earn a fate point. While you have a fate point, your next 5-star is guaranteed to be the one you want, regardless of other factors, and then the fate point goes away. Lastly, all of your pity and 50-50 status on the character banners is shared between all character banners, including future ones. Weapon banners also share their pity and 50-50 status with future weapon banners, but the fate point is not shared between these banners. It will go away if you don't use it. And I didn't mention the Chronicled Wish because it's barely ever available, but it's basically a combination of everything I said above, with the special rule that if you lose your 50-50, you'll only get something else from the same banner. Now that we got the mechanics out of the way, what should you actually be wishing for? Well, if you see a character you really like, then go for them. Because the truth is, the game is easy enough that if your favorite character happens to be garbage, you can still make them work with good enough gear and teammates. That said, I will give you some general wishing advice, a tips list within a tips list. First, try to save your wishes and only spend them where there's a 5-star you know you want. Don't just pull willy-nilly on every banner just to see what you get. That's how you start a gambling addiction. This goes doubly for the weapon banner because your fate point will not be saved if you don't spend it in time. But even on the character banner, all the time people randomly pull on it thinking they'll just get some 4-stars, and then they get the rate up 5-star that they didn't actually want, and now all of the pity that they had built up is now gone, and they'll be starting from 0 on the next banner with a character they actually wanted. And if they were on a guarantee instead of a 50-50, that's a huge investment wasted on a character they didn't actually want. So just save your wishes and spend them when the character you want is on the banner. Second, it's probably best to avoid the weapon banner until you know what you're doing. All a 5-star weapon is going to do is make one character a little stronger. If you really love that character, then it's fine, but if you're a newer player, you will be much better served by building up a roster of characters before heavily investing into just one of them. It's up to you, but like I said, Genshin Impact isn't so hard that you need to optimize every single character to that degree. There are tons of great 4-star or even 3-star weapons in the game, so no character ever needs a limited 5-star signature weapon in order to be good. Third, I didn't mention constellations yet, so let's do that real quick. When you get multiple copies of a character, you start unlocking their constellations. When you first get a character, we say they are Constellation 0 or C0. Then your second copy is C1, then C2, all the way to C6. Constellations generally make a character stronger. A few characters actually need their constellations in order to be good, but for the most part, that applies to 4-stars whose constellations you'll gradually build up over time. In general, I would treat constellations on 5-stars like signature weapons. An upgrade, but probably not worth it for the amount of wishes it requires, unless you absolutely love the character. But either way, definitely look up a guide for the character first to see how important their constellations actually are. I will recommend some guides later. That's all I have to say about wishes, so let's go to the next big tip. Number 2. The shops. Spending Primogems, Stardust, Star Glitter, and Genesis Crystals. Along with the wishes, the in-game shop is another thing that will tempt you into spending your money, so let's talk about the various things in it. First, let's talk about the best part, Paimon's Bargains. There are 3 pages to Paimon's Bargains in which you spend 3 different types of currency. It might seem complicated, but the point of this video is to let you know that it's actually pretty simple. Let's start on the last page, Purchase with Primogems. Do not ever purchase Acquaint Fates with Primogems, only ever purchase Intertwined Fates. That's it, next page. The Stardust Exchange lets you buy all sorts of progression items, but for the most part there's only 3 things you ever need to buy here. Once per month you can buy 5 Intertwined Fates and 5 Acquaint Fates for a total of 750 Stardust. The third thing is Dust of Azoth, which you might want to keep a small stock of to help you ascend characters, because getting the right gemstone types can be annoying. Everything else on this page is just various materials you can get by defeating enemies. If you have tons of Stardust to spare and don't feel like farming, I guess you can buy stuff, but make sure you keep a savings of 750 Stardust to make sure you can buy the Fates next month. Stardust and Star Glitter are only earned by wishing on banners, and if you save your wishes responsibly, it's feasible that you could go a whole month without wishing and earning more of these currencies. Lastly, the Star Glitter Exchange. The most important things you can buy from the Star Glitter Exchange are characters. Every month there will be 2 characters in here, and I strongly recommend saving your Star Glitter to spend on them. The same set of characters cycles every 6 months, so you'll always know who's coming up. To get specific, this is who you want. Buy every Fischl you see, buy every Zhongling until you get her to at least C4, buy Beidou until you get her to at least C2, buy every Jingqiu you see, buy every Bennett you see. Once you have all of that, then it's more down to personal preference. The 3 starter characters, Amber, Lisa, and Kaeya, never appear on banners, so it's very hard to obtain extra copies of them unless you buy them in this shop. That said, Amber is worthless, and Lisa doesn't rely too heavily on her constellations, so you might not want them. Kaeya, on the other hand, is quite good at C6, so he's a good purchase option. Some of the weapons are decent and can only be gotten from this shop. I have no recommendation there, but if you see one in a character building guide and want to grab it for your character, then go for it. The Crowns of Insight are needed to max out a character's talents, but you'll earn a good number of them just by playing the game, and it's unlikely that they will ever be the bottleneck that's stopping you from maxing out a character compared to all the other materials you'll need. I don't recommend buying them, but if you find yourself running out, it is an option. Lastly, please don't ever buy the other materials in here. It's an absolute waste when you can not only buy them from the Stardust shop, but also get them just by playing the game. So with all that said, if you think you've bought everything from the shop that you need, you can then dump all of your Star Glitter into buying Intertwined Fates. That's the big shop out of the way. Every other tab in the shop is all about money and Genesis Crystals, which are what you get when you spend money. There are only 3 things you can do with Genesis Crystals. One is spend them in the gift shop, which I don't recommend because this is all stuff you can get just by playing the game. The other is buy skins in the character outfits tab, which is reasonable if there's a skin you really like. Most skins cost 1,680 Genesis Genesis crystals, which, to put in perspective, if you are starting from zero, will require that you buy the $15 US top-up. If you're not starting from zero, then the price in dollars is more vague, but treat them like they cost anywhere from $15 to $30 US. The last usage of Genesis crystals is simply converting them one-to-one into Primogems, which is usually what you'll be doing with them. That just leaves the money. For this, I'll go through the options in terms of bang for your buck. Note that the first time you buy any given Genesis crystal bundle, you get double, and after that you get a little bonus. That said, if you're going to convert your Genesis crystals to Primogems anyway, then by far the best bang for your buck is the Blessing of the Welkin Moon, but keep in mind it takes 30 days to get them all, and you must log in every day for that 30 days. Let's also mention the Battle Pass. If you play enough to complete the Battle Pass, then buying it is in second place for bang for your buck in Primogem value alone, but you also get a ton of progression materials as well as a Battle Pass exclusive weapon. Most of those are usable, except for Talking Stick, so if you get the Battle Pass, then just grab whichever one you need. If you want to know which one is the best compared to other options of the same weapon type, then it's Serpent Spine. Number 3. Spending Resin. As a mobile game, Genshin Impact employs the staple mechanic of nearly all mobile games: time gating your ability to progress. Basically, original resin is the resource you need to spend in order to farm most of the meaningful materials to level up your characters and gear. It very slowly regenerates over time, which puts a soft cap on how much you can farm materials each day. Its storage is also capped, so you can't save up tons of it to spend all on one day. You have to spend it every day or you lose it. Early on, the only things you can spend resin on are ley lines. These will get you character XP items or Mora, both of which are important for progression. Eventually, you'll need to defeat bosses to keep leveling your characters, and later you will unlock domains to get talent and weapon ascension materials, all of which also require resin, so you'll need to plan what to spend it on. Lastly, you will unlock artifact domains, but you should not do them until adventure rank 45. Before then, you are not guaranteed to get a 5-star artifact from an artifact domain, and thus your resin expenditure might be completely worthless. Second of all, artifacts are never a guaranteed upgrade to your characters, so there's always a chance that you'll be flushing resin down the drain, whereas all the other materials are always guaranteed progress on making your characters stronger. Optimizing your artifacts is something you should only really worry about once you have your characters leveled up and you're ready to take your teams to the next level and try clearing the highest floors of the Spiral Abyss. Plus, you get some artifacts from defeating bosses, and those should be good enough to hold you over in the early game. As a final note about resin, there are ways to get more original resin. You can earn items called fragile resin, which you can use to immediately gain 60 original resin. Personally, I recommend saving all of your fragile resin until you unlock a new character and want to get them built ASAP. Otherwise, patience will reward you more in the long run. You also eventually get access to your teapot, in which you can buy 1 transient resin per week, which functions just like fragile resin, except that it will expire if you don't use it, so that you should use. Lastly, if you are a whale who plans on spending a bunch of money on the game, you can spend your very valuable Primogems to get more original resin every day. I definitely don't recommend doing this, but a lot of people will. That is how mobile games make their money, and the biggest reason why resin exists in the first place. Avoid doing this if you are free to play, but if you plan on being a big spender, then you do you, I guess. Number 4. Some characters you can't level early. Every character requires specific materials in order to be fully leveled up. To level them past 20, you need 3 of a certain collectible item that depends on the character, and to level them past 40, you need 2 of a similarly specific material dropped by a world boss. These costs increase the higher you ascend them. The problem is, some of the bosses and collectibles can only be obtained once you progress your main story quest to a certain point. Let's say you're a new player who just pulled Raiden Shogun. Well, if you do her trial run, then you will get the 3 flowers you need to level her past 20, but if you want to level her past 40, you will not only need more of that flower, which can only be obtained once you have progressed past the Archon Quest Chapter 2 Act 1, but you also need to defeat a world boss, which is only unlocked after you do that, and then also complete a somewhat lengthy world quest. So hopefully you don't want to level her past 40 anytime soon. There are several more characters with the same issues, so let's show them now. These are the characters you cannot level past 40 until you do Archon Quest Chapter 2 Act 1. These are the characters you cannot level past 40 until you do that quest in addition to another world quest. These are the characters you cannot level past 40 until you progress a certain lengthy world quest in Liyue. Note that Kuki Shinobu and Heizo are on 2 of those lists, so they require some work in order to level up. Number 5. Is crafting worth it? Crafting seems cool and all, and it is, but only if you know what to craft. More specifically, what weapons to craft. Non-weapons you can pretty much craft whenever you want, but weapons require an extremely rare material called a billet. You need to take caution with every billet that you spend because some of the craftable weapons are really good and you will be very disappointed if you spend all of your billets and leave yourself unable to craft a weapon that you really want. So I recommend you always check guides on which weapons are the best for the characters you want to gear before you go consuming your billets. I'll name a few right now just to get you started. If you get Kuki Shinobu, one of her best weapons is Iron Sting, but you only need one. If you get Bennett, one of his best weapons is Sapwood Blade, but again, you only need one. If you get Neuvillette, one of his best weapons is Prototype Amber, and you will want 5 of them to get it to Refinement rank 5. If you get Clarande, one of her best weapons is Finale of the Deep, which you will also want 5 of to get to Refinement rank 5. I'll stop there. For anything else, consult the guides I mentioned at the end of the video. Number 6. Keep your 3-star weapons. You might think all the 3-star weapons you get while wishing or opening treasure chests are just fodder, but hold on. Believe it or not, some 3-star weapons are actually really good. As you collect these, you should refine them up to Refinement rank 5 and keep a couple of them around, especially if you don't plan to pull on the weapon banner or buy the battle pass. Harbinger of Dawn is a sword that gives you crit damage and crit rate, which are your key DPS stats. If your sword DPS can stay above 90% HP, your DPS with this sword can compete with many high-rarity swords. Slingshot is a bow that also gives you crit rate, along with a hefty damage boost as long as you are near the enemy, which you generally will be. It's actually better than many 4-star or even 5-star weapons in some cases. White Tassel is a polearm that once again gives you crit rate, and some normal attack damage. For characters like Arlecchino, this can be her best weapon if you don't pull for her signature or buy the battle pass. Also, you can only get this from treasure chests, so once you've opened them all, you won't get any more White Tassels. Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers is a catalyst that is not just good for a 3-star weapon, it is straight up one of the best support weapons in the entire game. The amount of attack it grants to your carry is insane. So any team that uses a carry who scales with attack would love to have a support using this weapon. You should keep several of these on your account, all at Refinement rank 5. As a funny side note, since all you want out of it is the passive, you usually don't even have to level them up, just refine them to R5. This is more of a meme, but Dark Iron Sword is worth mentioning just because there are only 2 of them in the entire game. It might not be the best weapon, but the trivial amount of XP you'd get from using it as fodder isn't worth losing the novelty of having a weapon this rare. Those are the big ones, but personally I would recommend keeping around one R5 copy of every 3-star weapon in the game just for novelty. While we're on the subject of weapons, I'd also like to call out some 4-star weapons. When you get a 4-star weapon from an event wish, you might think it's a loss, but maybe you shouldn't. As I said earlier, characters in this game don't need 5-star weapons, and that's partially because many 4-star weapons are extremely good. I'm not going to go through all of them, I'm just going to mention one set of weapons that you need to be aware of, and that is the Favonius weapon series. Any Favonius weapon you get is a win. When in doubt, putting a Favonius weapon on any off-field character on your team will probably be better than most other options you have. The sword and lance are 2 of the single most valuable weapons in the entire game. The bow is up there too. The Codex is also good, but the fact that the aforementioned Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers exists means Codex has stiff competition as a support weapon. The Greatsword doesn't have a lot of users, but it's still worth having. The reason I'm calling them out is to say that you might want to have multiple copies of them on your account more than a single high refinement copy, so think about how many of your characters could use them before refining your Favonius weapons. Number 7. When great characters seem bad. So you've heard that Bennett, Zhongling, Jingqiu, Fischl, etc. are some of the best characters in the game, so you put them on your team expecting to annihilate everything, but so far you don't really see the appeal. What gives? Well, the thing you need to keep in mind about pretty much every guide made for this game is that they are made for endgame players looking to optimize and get the most out of their account. Yes, Bennett, Zhongling, and Jingqiu are 3 of the best characters in the game, but what you might not realize is that they are only good if you have enough energy recharge to use their elemental bursts every time they come off cooldown, and at low level you simply are not going to have the gear to do that, so these characters might seem kinda bad. Then when it comes to Fischl, the sole reason she is so good is her 4th Ascension passive talent, which you don't unlock until you get her to level 60 and ascend her for the 4th time. So the lesson here is to take endgame team building advice with a grain of salt. Just because you see that you can field a meta team using the characters you have doesn't mean you can play that team. Some of those characters might require a lot of energy recharge, as I mentioned. Some might require a specific artifact set, which, as I said way earlier, you shouldn't even try to farm until Adventure rank 45. Some might require constellations, some might require their higher level passive talents. And if you lack even one of those requirements, the team will be massively disappointing. Use guides to help you decide what characters to pull and build in the long term. But for the short term, focus on characters who don't have all those requirements in order to be playable. Focus on the basics of team building, like performing elemental reactions using whichever characters feel the most fun to you. I'll recommend a guide specifically for reactions in the final section. Before I move on to the final point, I mentioned energy recharge and elemental bursts several times, so I just want to make sure I clarify how the mechanics work in that regard, because the in-game tutorial barely tells you anything. The way to recharge your elemental burst energy is by collecting elemental particles, which are usually generated by using elemental skills or reducing the enemy's HP to certain thresholds. A character recharges more energy if the elemental particle's element matches that of the character, and characters recharge less energy if they are not currently on field when the elemental particle is collected. The amount is then multiplied by the character's energy recharge percent. Some characters have specific other ways to regain energy, but for the most part, that's all there is to it. Number 8. Events. Events are limited time quests and activities that Genshin and other games release every patch. They give you extra resources and sometimes give exclusive rewards that you can't obtain once the event ends. You have to reach a certain adventure rank to unlock them, and some of them will require or recommend that you do certain quests first, but any event you have access to you should try to do before it ends. That said, when an event recommends you do certain quests first, that usually means that the event will spoil those quests. Some spoilers are minor, but sometimes the event immediately following an Archon quest finale will completely spoil the entire finale. You probably still want to do the event because of the rewards, but you might want to skip all the dialogue if the event recommends you do a major quest first that you haven't done yet. Most events don't have much in the way of dialogue and are mostly just minigames, but usually every patch will have one major story event. Those are the ones you need to watch out for when it comes to the spoilers. Number 9. Other guides and resources you should know about. This video is just a beginner's guide, but as you get further into the game and want to start optimizing your teams, you might want some more advanced information. To that end, I'm happy to recommend the best places to go. First is kachingmains.com. There you will find the most in-depth character guides anywhere on the internet. If you want to know the best way to build and play any character, that's the site to visit. That said, it can take them a little bit to update when there's a patch, so if you want to know how to build a character that just came out, or even just learn how good the latest character is to see if you want to pull them, I've got another recommendation. One of the top theory crafters for the game is Zajeff77. His YouTube channel is an excellent source for any breaking information about changes to the game, including any new mechanics or new characters, including ones that are yet to be released if you're interested in leaks. His channel also has one of the best guides to the elemental reaction system that I've seen. I will link part 1 of that guide in the description. There are of course tons of other guide makers that you can check out who are also really good. I just wanted to pick out one. A lot of people have mixed feelings about the fandom wikis, but the Genshin Impact fandom wiki is a huge wealth of information, both surface level information about each character, weapon, enemy, etc., as well as in-depth information about how all the damage formulas and stats in the game are calculated, and everything in between. If you need help finding anything in the open world, there are 2 interactive maps you can use to see all collectibles as well as keep track of your collection progress for one-time items like chests. They both function pretty much the same, so you can use whichever one you think looks better. That about wraps up all the things I think every player should know when they start playing Genshin Impact. As a final note, I'll address the elephant in the room. Should a new player even start playing Genshin Impact so many years after it came out in the first place? While many people prejudge Genshin because it's a mobile game or a gacha game or a waifu collector or whatever, and most such games have no substance other than manipulating players to spend money via gambling addictions or skinner boxing or any number of other scummy tactics, if you actually take the time to look past all that, you will find that Genshin Impact is actually a very good game. The gameplay is fun, the mechanics are interesting and allow for a lot of strategy and skill expression. The story can get deep and emotional at times. The lore and world building are very well thought out, and there's so much content that it would take literally months of daily play to get through all of it, and almost none of that content is time-gated. You might hear that and think, well, if it'll take that long to get caught up, maybe I shouldn't start. But being caught up is overrated. Playing through that content is the good part. If you can get past the superficial mobile and gacha game elements, you'll find one of the best games out there. Thanks for watching.